All right, let me introduce Jeff Savlov. Jeff is a nationally recognized speaker, advisor, and thought leader focused on family wealth, legacy, and intentional parenting within families of wealth. He works closely with parents and advisors to help families strengthen communications and prepare rising generations for long-term success. His engaging approach blends practical guidance with real-world experience to help families build lasting alignment across generations. Would you please welcome Jeff Savlov?
You sure? All right. All right. We good now? Good. All right. No, you seem like a great bunch. We have a couple of Jersey guys here, Greg, right, who actually helped me get connected with FFR. And everything I've heard about this group sounds really awesome. I'll tell you in a bit, I'll tell you a little bit more about my background. It's sort of unusual, and a bunch of things happened by accident that kind of all came together. But I'm hoping we could have some interaction. And I'm going to start off with, what can you do with a 2-year-old who is going to inherit $25 million in their mid-20s? I'm going to ask you guys, if anyone could please just shout out, what would you do with a 2-year-old who is going to be an inheritor of significant wealth in their mid-20s?
Make sure they're employed.
Make sure what?
They're employed.
Make sure they are employed. At 2 years old? Get your kid working at 2? Okay. Sorry, it's a little hard to hear.
Love them unconditionally. Love them unconditionally.
Love them unconditionally. That's the line of thinking here. Sometimes people overthink it. Any other ideas about what you would do with a 2-year-old that's going to be an inheritor of significant wealth? And get another kid.
Surround him with bodyguards.
I'm sorry, what's that?
Surround him with bodyguards.
Oh, I'm having trouble. Surround them with bodyguards. Thanks. Sorry, I'm having a little trouble hearing up here. It's a little echo, and that's on me. The point is, if you wait until kids understand what money is, you've missed some of the greatest opportunities to raise children that can handle wealth. I'm going to show you, I have 3 videos, but the time's a little limited, so I'm just going to show you a couple of quick sections of 2 of them, and then I'm going to play one all the way through. This is a 2-year-old girl who barely has language, and her parents set up a little kitchen for her. And if I played the whole thing, you'll see that she completely prepares an entire meal herself for her and mom and dad, and is having absolute fun while doing it. Again, I can't go through the whole thing. Some of the links are on there. If you get the slides, you can check them out yourself. This one I'm going to go all the way through because it's the youngest of the 3 kids in the videos. This little boy is 15 months old. 1 year, 3 months, 15 months old, and just watch what he does. So the family business is clearly a water bottle delivery business, and he just put one of the bottles back. Now he takes one, it's almost as big as him. His walking isn't even that steady, right? Just getting in the doorway is going to be a challenge, but he does it. He realizes he has to turn a little bit to get the bottle through, and then he's so young, he turns back to make sure mom is still there, but he's doing his thing. He puts the bottle up, and watch what he does right here. He pushes it in place. He doesn't just put it up, he puts it in a line with the other bottles. Like, he's really into this job. Watch what happens here. This is huge. He voluntarily doubles his workload. Think about that, a 15-month-old child who voluntarily takes on double the work he has to. Now, a lot of kids might get frustrated when they can't get both of them through the door, but he stays with it. Again, an opportunity for frustration here, right? He can't hold both of them and put them up, so he puts one down calmly, puts one up. That kind of frustration tolerance is indicative of all kinds of wonderful future things. Being able to handle frustration. He got through the door, he put one down when he had 2, and now he's struggling. Does he throw a tantrum? Does he scream? No, he just keeps going at it. And he's going to try again, and he puts it down. He's going to hold it a different way. He's problem solving, 15 months old, and he just can't do it. And now, after all that, there is a time for mom and dad to come in and give some support. She helps him get it up, but watch what happens. Even now, she puts him down. No, Ma, it's got to go in the right place. Okay? Can you see intuitively the connection between this and a kid who's going to inherit a lot of money? Does this make some intuitive sense to you guys? That this is intentional stuff that can be done. And you know what? A lot of what I'm going to say today makes sense for poor parents, parents in poor families, and parents in working class families. A little later on, I'm going to ask you guys to give some thought to, is there a difference parenting when there's significant wealth and when there isn't? And we'll think that through a bit. The other video that, again, we just don't have time to go through the whole thing, but she's about 3 years old. Dad's got the tractor on. She doesn't have to do the gas and the brake. It's moving and it isn't stopping, but she's got to steer it. And he's giving her directions. And she makes a mistake. He says left, she goes to the right. He's like, no, Ashley, left.
Perfect.
And he's given her real responsibility. Again, no time to go through them all, but you get a sense of what's possible with kids that age. So to give you a little bit about my story, my dad went from high school into the Army. He learned printing. During the Korean War, he was printing maps for the Korean War effort. He came back, New York City, got into lithography, high-end, like art quality prints, but he was a blue-collar kind of worker bee, hated working for other people. He and my mom took a home equity loan, and with little savings they had, they were both kids of immigrants, there wasn't a lot of money, they risked everything to start his own business. At first, he was stressed out of his mind because it wasn't going well and he risked everything. Then he was stressed out of his mind because it took off and it was more than he could handle, and he had never run a company like that. So I'm in late high school, early college, and I'm doing anything I can to help him, and he's stressed out of his mind, and lucky me, I'm the one he took it all out on. Just sort of yelling and criticism in front of other employees when I'm just there trying to help out, while I'm going to school. So my mom sees it unfolding and she says, we got to do something. And so in her wisdom, this is like 40 years ago before psychologists working with family businesses was much of a thing. And she found a psychologist who had this specialty, and the whole family went. The psychologist insisted the whole family go, not just me and Dad. There's a longer version of this story, and I'll be around, hanging around the resort the rest of today. If you see me and you want the full story, I'll give it to them. But for now, and it's pretty intense, for now, let's just say that there was a transformative experience with this therapist. My dad told us stuff about his father escaping the Nazis and the rest of the family getting wiped out, which we didn't really know about. Bottom line is we had this amazing experience. We got a lot closer. I said, Dad, I don't like commercial printing, which is always a good reason not to go into the family business, right, if you don't even like it. And we just agreed we would have a better relationship if we weren't working together. I went into sales and marketing with my business degree, had a really good run at a young age, and just felt unfulfilled. And so I quit my early successful career in business, moved back home with my parents in my late 20s, which was interesting for us and positive. And I trained as a family therapist. I got a lot of training in child development and parenting, which kind of fits in later on, as you'll see. I did 7 years at a psychoanalytic institute, got certified as a psychoanalyst, and 30 plus years ago I started a private practice, and I really thought that's where I was gonna end up, and that would be my passion. And it was really a coincidence that my first couple of therapy clients way back then had really significant wealth. One had an operating business, the other had generational wealth. And as a therapist, they're telling me all kinds of things about their lives, and I'm just hearing all the dynamics and the worries about, with the operating business, how do you work together as cousins or siblings, and who's contributing and who's not contributing, and they're still getting the same amount of compensation and all those kinds of issues. But a lot of the issues had to do with, what do we tell our kids? When do we tell them? How do we raise kids that will work hard and have good values when they're growing up with levels of wealth that we just didn't have? So over the last 30 years, I shifted from really being a therapist to more of a consultant, educator, facilitator for these families, helping them with governance for families. Just like businesses have governance, there's a whole world of governance for families. How do we make decisions and pick leaders and transition wealth and work together? And during those years, I just saw a lot of missed opportunities, especially, I've seen a lot of painful stuff. I'd say in the last 5 to 7 years, wealthy families know that there's a lot of resources for them around parenting and communication that didn't used to be there. So more than ever, families are actively looking for ways that they can kind of get ahead of the curve. But it wasn't always that way. And over the years, I just saw so much pain that could have been avoided if parents had taken advantage of some of the biggest opportunities at ages 2, 3, 15 months, 2, 3, 4 years old. And so, in your experience, what do you think gets in the way for parents trying to communicate? What to communicate, when to communicate it? What do you think gets in the way? And anyone want to take a stab at that? What is that? Busyness? They're busy? Absolutely, they're busy.
Their own bias.
Sorry?
Their own bias.
Their own bias, like,
They've got a particular way of looking at the world through a particular lens, and the kid looks at it differently.
yep. And so how might that affect the way that they might decide not to tell them or to tell them or what to do?
They have their way that may not resonate.
Yeah, and that's really significant. I find that a lot of parents go the secrecy route, and if we don't say anything, and if we live beneath our means, and we buy used Honda Civics, and we don't renovate our brownstone in Brooklyn like everyone else on the street, they'll never know. Or they have their own bias, and they sort of finger wag and tell the kids, this is how it has to be, and this is what you need to do, and you need to be responsible with all this wealth that's coming your way. And so I developed something called the Purposeful Legacy Family Project, where I actually work with couples, and these are people who are, intentional and have some foresight, but couples before they have kids to really think through what can we do to take advantage of raising our kids when there's this kind of wealth and make it go well, and when kids are still in the first few years of life. And that's the Purposeful Legacy Family Project I was talking about. Now, I'm going to share a few things. My wife happens to be a psychologist. So I'm a family therapist and a psychoanalyst. My wife is a child psychologist. So we both said before we had kids, our kids are screwed. Shrinks are known for being a little quirky, right? Shrinks are known for being a little insane, and our kids have 2 of them. So when people would say when your kids are born, can we buy you like a bond or can we contribute to their 529? We just said, start a therapy fund because these kids are really going to be screwed. And yet, we did a few things right, and I'm going to share with you some of the things we did. We really put our heads together in terms of who we were as people, but also our training as psychologists and family therapists. And we really tried to live with intention. How can we raise our kids starting really young? And because we had that clinical experience, my wife was working with 1-year-olds when I met her, 1-year-olds and older, 1, 2, 3-year-olds. I was working with 3-year-olds. But we both had a sense that kids are capable of understanding a lot more than people realize. And so we took all that, and I'm going to share some of the things we did that went well. I want to be perfectly clear that we also did a lot of things that didn't go well. I'm just limited by my sons who have to give me permission for what I can talk about, how much of that I can bring up. So I'm going to talk about some of the things that we did well, but I want to be perfectly clear that we also made mistakes. I'm just not going to talk about them because my sons will have my head. So in terms of mistakes that we've made, we didn't always do everything the right way. Clearly, if I could go back in time, I would have given him a red Solo cup instead of just an open beer. That was a mistake. I learned from my mistakes. We wanted our kids to be healthy eaters, right? My wife and I, we're into fitness. We're not crazy, but we try to be reasonable and into fitness, into healthy eating. Can we bring up kids that at an early age will like healthy food? So we experimented. So the broccoli, we chose broccoli as soon as they started eating healthy foods. We chose broccoli, and if you take a little piece of broccoli and hold it like this, it kind of looks like a little tree. So one of us would hold the little tree, and the other would be like, I'm a giant. I'm such a big giant. I could eat a tree in one bite. And then what do you think the child is doing? They're giggling, they're smiling, they're watching mom and dad act silly. So my wife would hold the tree, and I'd make a big roar and munch it in one bite. I'm a big giant. I can eat broccoli. I can eat a tree in one bite. Hey, can you eat a tree in one bite, Mom? And I would do it for her. What do you think happened next? The kid's cracking up, and he wants to eat a tree in one bite. Just doing that a couple of times, our kids became lifelong broccoli eaters, even when it was a little weird to want broccoli. Like we'd be on vacation at the Jersey Shore at some rinky-dink little pizza place, and we'd order whatever pizza, and then our 6-year-old would be like, do you have steamed broccoli? And the waitress would be laughing at us because nobody asked for steamed broccoli at a kind of a oceanside pizza place, but it's stuck. And that's the point I'm trying to make. Did anyone notice I haven't really mentioned money yet? And we're talking about kids and wealth. Keep that in mind, because the biggest opportunities to instill values and character and work ethic, like that little the little 15-month-old boy, its stuff is all in the first couple of years. The tail wagging the dog, if you start with money and then try to instill character around it, instill the right stuff as early as possible, and you can start super early. The other example you can see on the screen, the cereal aisle in the supermarket. That thing is insane. The average supermarket has, at kid eye level, is all these amazing colors and their favorite characters from TV. And before we had kids, my wife and I would see these kids throwing a tantrum, grabbing for the box that had their favorite character on it. We thought, let's see if we could do something with that. So we're down the cereal aisle, and our older son is probably 2, and he's probably Barney the purple dinosaur. I don't know if anyone here is around my age and kids knew Barney the purple dinosaur was on the cereal box, and he starts, whining for it, and we just picked it up. Again, he's like 2.5, and one of the things we did regularly was just speak to them like they're adults. Kids can absorb more than you realize, and we took the box and we said, the people who make this want us to take our money out of our pocket and give it to them and buy this so that they can have our money, but what are they doing for us? They're showing you a picture of Barney, so you really like it, but let's look at what's in here. And we show him the ingredients, and he couldn't read any of it, but some of this stuff, it's kind of like paint that we paint the house. They use that to color the cereal in here. And there's other things in here that are chemicals. They're not just like food from a tree. It's not good for your body, but they're using how much you love Barney to make you want it. Let's go to a different aisle in the same store where they have the ingredients in here are good for your body and good to give you big muscles. Do you want big muscles? You get the sense of it, right? It was a one conversation thing. And after that, we would go down this aisle and he would say some version of, they want our money, or whatever he picked up. But there was no fighting ever again. And I'm not saying every kid is going to go this way, but many more kids are capable of this than you imagine. So instead of just wrestling with the kid and fighting over you can't have this or giving in and buying it, there's a way to sort of explain to kids what's going on that they can absorb, much more than people realize. So this is really the overview of the whole concept of kids and wealth. Tell them stories, and I'm going to go a little bit more deeply into, again, kids can understand way more than people generally realize. You can tell them stories about the family, the wealth creators, but also just the stories of the family. I mean, my wife is an only child of 2 Holocaust survivors, Jews who were living in Germany during the 40s. And our kids were very young when we had their grandparents and aunts and uncles tell them really crazy stories of survival. And again, I'm going to show you some research about the importance of telling those kinds of stories, not just the stories of how things went well and someone started a business and we have tons of money, but also how things didn't go well for the family. So telling stories, giving the kids a variety of experiences. One of the best things we did was also one of the least expensive. It was camping. And I probably gave my kids access to sharp knives and fire at irresponsibly young ages, but they never burned themselves and they never cut themselves with these really sharp knives. My mother still thinks she was going to call Child Protective Services the crazy Jewish grandmother. But why do you think they didn't burn themselves or cut themselves with the sharp knives, even though I gave it to them at really young ages? Anyone have a guess? Taught them? Is that what somebody said? I taught them how to use them, right? You don't give your kid $25 million when they're in their mid-20s without teaching them. And this is sort of a lifelong teaching about life and character. I taught my kids, the fire's dangerous. It can really hurt you. This knife is very sharp. It can cut your skin open. You got to be careful, and taught them how to do it. The same is true for family wealth. Developmentally, starting from young ages, there's all kinds of things you can teach kids so that they are prepared. You can prepare them for a sharp knife, you can prepare them for fire, you can prepare them for wealth that they may be a steward of in the future. So experiences. Camping was great. Values. What do you think the biggest mistake is around values? Parents have values they want instilled in their kid. What do you think the number one mistake is? Around the values themselves. So you're saying give them too much. I agree that is a mistake that's often made, but specifically around values and trying to instill values into kids. It's one main thing that blows it out of the water every time. They don't follow them? Not walking the walk. Parents who are frustrated, our kids didn't pick up this, and this value, but they really weren't walking the walk themselves. So essential. Challenges. That little boy was challenged. He loved challenges. He took 1 water bottle and voluntarily took 2. That's beautiful. 15 months. Keep that in mind. Give them responsibility. Kids love responsibility. A 2-year-old absolutely is thrilled to take a little soap pellet, stick it in the dishwasher, and turn it on. It's thrilling for a 2-year-old. A 17-year-old who's never had to do that before, you got a fight on your hands. So it's not about making little kids into robots or slaves. If they enjoy it, like that little 15-month-old boy, he was having fun. If they enjoy it, give it to them. Give it to them. When they enjoy it and it's fun, why not give it to them? It's really that simple. Hold them accountable, and then give them opportunities to learn about all aspects of life so that they can figure out what they're really passionate about. Then the family wealth can support them to do that. And again, this stuff is fun. It's not about making little robots or little slaves. You saw that boy was enjoying himself. He was proud. We would let our kids maybe start the clothes washing machine when they were like 1.5, 2. That's thrilling for a 1.5, 2-year-old. So why not let them do it if it's thrilling? Again, values. These are just 6 random. There's tons of values. I have decks of cards that I use with families to help them really articulate values. And it's interesting, in the world I'm in, a lot of professionals do values exercises with families so that they kind of say, what are my top values? And make sure you live by them. One thing I like to do that's a little bit different when I do these exercises is show me your top values, and now tell me how you live by each one and give an example, but also tell me how you fall short on each example. And then tell me how you're going to live a little bit better by the ones where you're falling short. It's not enough to identify them. That's very kind of highfalutin and abstract. Tell me how you're living by them, tell me how you're falling short, and then come up with a way to better live by them, to hold yourself accountable. But really being intentional about values is key. My wife and I did it around reading, around eating healthy, getting outdoors. We didn't buy our kids any of the electronic stuff. The Wii and a Game Boy were huge when my kids were growing up. Instead, we made sure we got a house that had a nice yard and a pool, and in the summers when the kids were off and all their friends were in the basements doing the electronic stuff, we had them invite their friends over and just got them used to being outside and having a great time. And now my kids in their 20s are constantly giving me a hard time for how much I'm on my phone. I mean, we super succeeded on that one. They're almost like anti-tech and giving us a hard time. But again, living by the values. There was something else I was going to say about values. Oh, just conflict between parents. My wife was really fluent in French. She just learned it in high school and college. And I had learned Spanish along the way and just was decent, not great. And so there was like a war. Again, parents, get on the same page or your kids get caught in the middle. So she was pushing for French, I was pushing for Spanish, and the power of stories, I told them how my father's father, my grandpa Phil, told them about the Holocaust, told them how he had escaped and really risked his life escaping the Nazis. He hid on a ship. The ship went to Mexico and he just sort of made a life. He learned Spanish, he made a life, and then he came to New York. And they thought it was a really just cool story. And they liked being a part of a survivor mentality family. Like then when the shit hit the fan, excuse my language, we had relatives who really stood up and survived, and they liked that. And they just caught on, and they took to Spanish, and they both learned Spanish and never learned French, and my wife is still really pissed about it. But that's the power of stories. It's like they were connected to something about the story there, and I won and my wife lost, and that doesn't happen that often, so yay for me on that one. Types of capital, right? Money is one type of capital, and this is sort of a big concept in the world. I mean, has anyone come across this, the types of non-financial capital? Jay Hughes was someone who wrote a lot about family wealth. Really, there's some great stuff out there about this. So it's what are the types of capital that are not money, not financial, right? Human capital, and to be intentional as a family, are we developing all the non-financial, and as they get older, developing and teaching them about the financial aspects too. So human capital, right, the knowledge and skills and just the personal values and commitments of the individual family member. Relationship capital, the way the family gets along and the value of family and developing that capital, investing in it. Social capital, how you contribute to the community and the society around you and how kids get connected to that. And then spiritual, whether it's organized religion or however you are spiritual, being involved in something bigger than yourself and actively developing all those with your family. So, is there any difference parenting young kids when there's significant wealth or maybe poverty or working class? Is there a difference in the parenting? Any thoughts on that? I'm having a little trouble hearing from up here, so if you can yell loudly if you have something to say, that would help. Yeah. The working class, if they come from nothing. Beautiful, beautiful. That's right on. I see it all the time. I have sat with more really wealthy 90-year-olds crying. They came from poverty, living in a tenement in New York City as immigrants with rats and roaches and a bathroom at the end of the hall that they shared with lots of other, this is an actual story, shared with other people, and then working, 10, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, shining shoes, whatever. And then they went to New Jersey, this one particular case, because it was cheaper, and this brilliant, fourth grader, fifth grader, thought, man, everyone's going to want to get out of here. All the immigrants that are poor around us are going to want to go Connecticut, New Jersey, where it's cheaper. And he just started, whatever he was doing, shining shoes, other things. He basically had the brilliance, again, with a fourth grade education, had the brilliance to say, other immigrants are going to want to do this. This seems to be a popular spot. These are tiny roads now, but I'm going to buy the land around the intersection of all these tiny roads thinking that they're going to be big roads. And man, when I was talking to this 92-year-old at one of the massive shopping malls on the corner of a massive intersection that was once a dirt road, it was absolute brilliance, born out of the necessity of abject poverty. Why was he crying? Didn't want, as this gentleman said, didn't want my kids to go through what I went through. So private school, pick any car you want when you're 17, paid for college. Same for the grandkids, not just the kids, the grandkids. Almost none of the grandkids finished college. They all had beautiful cars, no-show jobs at the family business. And this guy was in tears because the whole thing was a mess. All the non-family executives running the company were just completely pissed off that all these family members were doing nothing and taking profits, and it was just sad, and the guy was tearing up. So what I would say is one of the differences of parenting and wealth versus poverty or in a working class family is poverty and working class families have natural consequences when things go wrong. Life is going to come and get you, right? You could not listen to mom and dad, but life is going to come and get you. With wealth, it's easy to make life a little bit too easy or a lot too easy. And often it's, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Often these things are done with the heart in a good place. I don't want you to have the kind of pain that I had. One of my main messages to wealthy families is a parent's job is not to make life as easy as possible. Think about this. It's to make life the right amount of challenging for your kids. Challenge them. It's a big deal. And 3 different kids could have 3 different levels. That kid with the water bottles, he was taking 1, he was taking 2. He didn't throw a temper tantrum when he couldn't get it up. Some kids would have thrown a tantrum before that. It's not to save them, but it's about how to coach and support each one so that they have enough frustration. Actually, I thought it was the next slide. There's a slide coming up that talks about the role of frustration in healthy development. We'll get to that in a bit. Let me check the time. All right, so what can couples do before they have kids? Get on the same page. Working as I don't do much therapy anymore, but over the last 30 years, I worked with plenty of couples who just never had conversations about basic values around, and not just wealthy. This is sort of in my therapy practice, wealthy, middle class. So many couples run into issues, and they never really had conversations before they got married about values, about money, about materialism. And certainly with wealthy families, if one member of the couple is thinking, you know, a simple house and Honda Civics and we'll live beneath our means, and the other member of the couple thinks fancy cars, big giant house, that's going to cause some trouble, and certainly you're going to give your kids mixed messages. So I'm not saying couples have to be on the same page, but have some conversation before you have kids about money and meaning and purpose and how to get on the same page as much as possible and how to give common messages about values to your kids. There's a lot of great stuff that you can do there, and managing these differences before the kids come. So here, this is the frustration research. Heinz Kohut was a famous psychoanalyst, and he came up with this term, optimal frustration, that without the right amount of frustration, kids are not pushed to overcome adversity and grow. And that's where he said self-esteem and character comes from. When there's a lot of financial resources in a family, it's easy to give a lot of things without having to work for it. Dan, who mistakenly introduced me before I was officially introduced, we were having a conversation about our kids. We just coincidentally found out that we grew up in New Jersey near each other, but we were talking about our kids' first cars. And he had, I think he put a down payment, and then the kid picked up the payments, or the kid maybe made the down payment, and then he picked up the payments, but there was skin in the game. And I was saying, my kids know my wife and I could have bought them, a basic, used Honda type deal, but we did 50-50 matching. Whatever, we had our kids work illegally when they were like 13, under the table, cash at a sushi place that we were going to when they were young. So I'm into sort of this values thing, even if it means breaking the law. But it was great because they were like 13, mopping the floor and watching the sushi guys. And these guys they pretty much all had families, wives and kids in Indonesia. These guys were working 12 hours a day. Their feet were purple because they're just standing there making sushi. And my sons got to really see what life is like for other people. Where was I going with all that? With the car. So they saved. They had a lot more money than they needed for their 50% of the car, and our matching campaign. So then they got to say, do I take my $7,000, get $7,000 from mom and dad, and get a $14,000 used car, or do I take half of my $7,000, get $3,500 each, and get a much smaller car, but I get to keep more of my money? Like, built it in. We could have easily bought them the car. They would have missed that lesson. And both boys chose to save, to hang on to some of their savings and get a crappier car for less money and keep some of their money. But you can build that in. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. And building these things in, we had our kids, when it got time for smartphones, we had them, this is when you had to sort of buy the phone. We had them pay for the phone with their own money. I'm going to admit this in public. And then it was like $30 a month for data. They had to pay us that every month. They were pissed. None of their friends' parents did anything like this. And they really felt like this was like abusive or whatever they thought it was. Okay, that's fine. This is us teaching you, this is how life really works. So one day you're going to have to pay for what you want in life. My older son was probably a junior in college when he actually, and we didn't need a thank you, but he thanked us because he was surrounded by kids that just charged credit cards beyond what they could pay off. They were getting into debt. They didn't know how to balance a budget. And he was grilling salmon and brown rice and broccoli, there's the broccoli, on a student's budget because he stuck with the healthy eating, and he thanked us for showing him these lessons so that he knew how to manage money. So this stuff really sticks. What would you do with this kid right here? This kid clearly wants the bear. You're the caretaker with this kid in a park. His bear is stuck on a tree. Thinking about everything that I've just said, what would be a strategic way to interact with this kid who wants that bear? What's that? I love it. I don't think anyone has ever said that before. I always have to say that because no one does, so thank you very much. Show him how to jump, right? If he starts throwing a fit because he can't get it, you can get down right next to him and say, okay, 1, 2, 3, we're gonna jump as high as we can, and you jump with him and see if you can get him to jump high enough to get it. If that doesn't work and there's starting to be frustration, some kids will just keep going and going and going. That's how I was at that age. I would have just kept jumping until I climbed the tree and broke my neck. Then you can maybe pull the branch down a little bit so they're still trying, and then they can jump and reach it. You could say, do you want a little help? And they might say yes, and say, okay, we'll do it together. 1, 2, 3, and you give them a little bump, as opposed to just going and pulling the brayer off or pushing the tree down. It's integrating ways to give kids a sense of the harder you try, the better life's gonna be. And again, I'm not focusing a lot on money at this point. This is just a simple idea that a lot of parents hopefully do. Please, thank you, I'm sorry, right? Please is respect, thank you is gratitude, I'm sorry is remorse, key fundamental values. And the golden sippy cup rule is when they're old enough to have a sippy cup and hold it and drink from it, and then they just sort of put it down, they need to be expected to pick it up and walk over to the sink, maybe have a little stool where they can climb up and put it in the sink. Not just drink from their sippy cup, but be responsible. And this is stuff you could do at 1 or 2 years old, and those are just really basic. A couple of key points. You can talk, and these are big. Families really love these too. You can talk about family, financial wealth, financial success, and other types of success without talking about money. And then you can talk about money without using numbers. And this is a real formula that helps parents calm down a lot. How do you talk about financial success without talking about money? Tell a story. Tell a story that has nothing to do with the business, or tell a story about the business. Hey, this is made up, by the way. I use this as an example, and people think it's like a real cookie company, and they try to guess later. Hey, was this? No, it's totally made up. Hey, you know when we're in the store and we see the cookies with grandma's face on it? You know, grandma started that when she was in a little house and they didn't have enough money for clothes and to pay for their house. She started making cookies just to sell them and make a little extra money to get clothes for your aunts and uncles. And then they got so popular, everybody wanted them, so she started making more, and she had extra money, and she bought a little tiny factory down the street, and they started making cookies, lots more cookies, and the supermarkets started buying them. And then it grew, and Grandma always hired people from the neighborhood, other people who were having trouble paying for clothes and for their place to live. And she always treated them fairly and paid them more money than other people paid them for a similar kind of job, because Grandma was about helping other people. As she made more money, she wanted to help other people make more money. Just an example of how you can tell a kid a story that sort of gets into them about values in life. And you can say, if you want to work for Grandma's, now it's a giant company all over the country. Grandma's cookies are being sold. If you want to be part of that company, you have to do really well in school, and you have to prove to the people running the company that you can make the company even better than they made it. You're going to have to prove yourself if you ever want to work there, as opposed to, see it all the time, telling an 8-year-old who's the oldest of the cousin group, you're going to be the president of Grandpa's company one day because you're the firstborn. Happens all the time. I was just involved. The 8-year-old's now 42, horrible president of the company. The non-family executives that run the place are quitting one at a time because this guy's ruining it. All because you told an 8-year-old, one day you're going to be president of the company, instead of try hard in school and live by Grandma's rules, and maybe you can get in the company one day. So in terms of research about stories and how cool they are, these researchers were doing this 20 questions research where they were doing it in New York City, and it was basically, do you know where your parents met? Do you know where your grandparents were from? Do you know what job your grandmother or grandfather did? Do you know if your grandmother worked? 20 questions like that about the family. The more of those questions a kid could answer correlated with all these amazing healthy things, knowing about the family. So while they were doing the research in New York City, September 11, 2001, the towers are hit. And now they have this group of kids that they tested before. Their kids are living and traumatized in New York City, and they test them again using measures of how many of the questions could they answer, but also measures around their stress level, their level of trauma, and their level of happiness, and all of that. And consistently, the kids who had answered higher the 20 questions before September 11th were doing better after September 11th. So this stuff is really powerful, not just in terms of the obvious lessons you can teach kids, like the grandma cookie story, but this stuff really has major effects. The more the children knew about the family history, the stronger their sense of control over their lives, the higher their self-esteem, the more successfully they believe their families function. This one is just amazing. It was the best single predictor of children's emotional health and happiness that they found, just knowing a lot about the family. And they found that there's 3 types of narratives. Ascending is things were really crappy and it went great. Descending, things were really great and something horrible happened. And then oscillating is when you give kids some of each. Common sense, I think, would say that oscillating is the most helpful, and that is what they found. If you teach kids only the good stories, they're going to think life's easy and works out well all the time. If you give the descending ones that end horribly, they're going to think, wow, life is awful, why try? But it's giving them a realistic sense of the ups and downs and relating it to your family. I mean, the stories that my kids were like in middle school when my wife's mother and her twin sister told them that they were in a soccer stadium where everyone was getting shipped out to Auschwitz and they had to escape, and so they snuck out at night. A Nazi caught them and started like manhandling them. And these 2 16-year-old, and these are 2 88-year-old women telling this story to my kids. At the time they were 16. They beat the Nazis with their hands, scratched his eyes till his face was bloody and he couldn't see, ran away and lived. Now that's a crazy story and it's a little upsetting, but man, did my sons feel like, wow, these 2 old women kicked some ass. And it was a sense of pride, right? A lot of people died, but somehow we come from a family that did crazy things to survive. Nothing against the people who didn't survive, that's awful, but it gets in your bones.
Jeff, are you going to get into the issue of these adult age kids that are entitled to dollhouse?
Yep.
And mom and dad are rich?
Yep. Ta-da! Look at that. Perfect timing. It was like a plant. So one of the things I'll say, just looking at time, I'll go right there. There's something I call falling on the sword. I didn't make up the expression, but it's when you sort of take responsibility for your mistakes. Absolutely, I get a lot of, more than ever, I get families where the kids are young or not even born, and people want to get ahead of this, and it's beautiful. The majority is still people reaching out saying, man, we messed this up. What do we do now? My daughter's living in a $10 million penthouse in Miami. I give her $1 million or $2 million every year to try a business and it goes nowhere, right? What do we do? It's hard and it often doesn't go well. But the only thing I've seen that, in my experience, has worked is when the parents fall on their sword and they sit down. Sometimes it's facilitated by me. Sometimes I coach the parents to do that, and I'm never sure how they do it when I'm not there watching them. But it has to do with saying, listen, we want to have a serious conversation. We feel like we made some mistakes as parents. We made life so easy for you because we wanted you to have an easier life than we did. And we gave you a lot of stuff that you never had to work for. And now it seems like you just sort of want access to the money and the wealth, but haven't really earned it, and you don't really seem to know how to manage it. I'm giving you the $1 million or $2 million a year to start these businesses. They're not going anywhere. We really need to rethink this. If you want to start a business, maybe we need to approach it differently and try to do a reset. Sometimes it can work, but sometimes it's taken away too much from the kids that have gotten it, and families fall apart over it. That's why I like preaching about the young kid stuff. It's really, your odds are much better if you can set the foundation than having to rebuild the house. And it's hard. But when parents are willing to fall on their sword and say, listen, we screwed up, let's rethink this, we think it's not great for you, it can work depending on where the kids are at. Wants and needs is just a great thing to talk. As kids are getting older, even if you see that they're maybe getting a little bit spoiled, have a conversation about what are the difference between wants and needs. I had a family that didn't want the 8-year-old. They wanted like the 13 to 20-year-olds. It was a couple of brothers that were doing this with me, and they didn't want the 8-year-old. I said, man, you got to have the 8-year-old. They say the wisest things, the little ones. So they allowed him to come, and we were talking about wants and needs, right? Needs is pretty easy: food, clothing, shelter, right? His older cousins, 13, 18, 20 something. That stuff's easy. And then they were talking about, wants and computer and iPhone and whatever. And the 8-year-old said, friendship is a need. And everybody said, you could live without friends. It might not be fun, but you could live without friends. And the 8-year-old said, I don't know, man, a life without any friends doesn't sound like a good life. I think friends are a need. And like the eyes started tearing up from the 8-year-old that they weren't going to let participate, suddenly is saying words of wisdom. They all agreed to put friendship on the list. And then other things come up with families: education, healthcare, are they wants, are they needs? And it gets pretty deep about family values and community and society, and different families come down with different elements of it. But it's a really important exercise to do along the way. I'll do this thing with licorice. I'll take 100 pieces of licorice, put it on a platter, and the kids have to be old enough to understand percentages. And I'll say, here's 100 pieces of licorice. I want you to remove all the families in the world that have less money than your family. So now we're going to the money piece. We did all the non-money piece. Now here's a bridge to money. And so at this one family with the 8-year-old, there was a 21-year-old that was going for his degree in economics at University of Chicago, which I just thought was ironic, because he took 92 pieces of licorice out of 100, which was just insanely off, but he thought he was close. And other people, took their guess. And then I come over and I kind of take a bunch, and I take a bunch more, and I get down to 10, and I hold it up, and they're like, okay, we were close. And then I take one at a time with some drama, and then I hold it up, and I'm like, and they're like, wow. And then I take scissors and I cut it down to 1/10 of one piece of licorice. And there's calculators that you can, based on the family's net worth or income, you can basically place them in the world. And then I'm holding a piece of licorice this big. I still didn't say anything about dollar amounts, but the kids all get a sense of even the University of Chicago, PhD economist is like, whoa, this is different than I thought. And that's still no numbers unless you want to. That leads to a conversation. What do you do when you have that much money than the rest of the world has? Most of the families I'm working with are into philanthropy and social impact, and they start to talk about how they can make a difference in the world. But the conversations go different ways, but it's usually really positive, and it's sort of exciting. And kids want to learn more about, can I start a business? And okay, great, that's good that you want to start a business. Sometimes families will kind of smack down a child who's like, can I have money to start a business? And yell at them for being entitled. No, that's beautiful. Sure, I'd love to help you start a business. Here's what you have to do to prove to me you're ready. And you can help a kid, even with a lemonade stand, do a simple business plan. But you start to connect accountability into the process. This is something great. It was Kirby Rosblock was a 4th generation member of a very wealthy, enterprising family, and her family did it with a lot of secrecy and kind of all the less than ideal ways. And so she started this learning platform, which is for young adults to learn all about the world of family wealth. In a basic way. It's not getting highly technical, but everything from what's a trust, and what's a trustee, and what's a beneficiary, and what's the idea of stewardship, and what kind of professionals are you going to have to work with, and what's a family office. And for families that are ultra high net worth and have a family office, it's an amazing platform. They started it where families could do it themselves, and the families were saying this isn't going well for us doing it ourselves, because typically the senior generation becomes very lectury. So they basically have trained facilitators who do this. But anyone here could get trained in this and offer a whole other level of connection and service to your clients by running them through this. I'm finishing up a family in Texas, probably 14 months, doing an hour and a half a week just on a Tamarind lesson that they read, in between weeks. So this is something to think about if you want to offer more for your clients and connect with even wealthier clients and connect with the next generation who could hire you or fire you based on whether they felt connected, with you, or if it was just with their parents. This is the falling on your sword, which I got to before in terms of if it's too late. And that's what I've got for today. Any thoughts that anyone wants to share or questions? Yeah, what do we got?
I've got an ultra wealthy client that told me that he's not going to leave any money on his children, that he'll pay for any education.
Yeah.
But when he dies, all his money is going to charity. And it's really not my business, what he decides to do with his money. But I'm just curious of your perspective on someone. And his kids seem to be good kids.
Yeah.
Kids,
yeah.
children. Of what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah.
How you deal with that?
Yeah, I see more of that happening where parents are like, listen, I'm just going to give it to charity. And even then, they usually give a little something. Wouldn't be surprised if this guy gives $1 million or a few $100,000 or something, but not the 50 or whatever. I see more of it happening. I think parents feel like it's something valuable about being able to go out there and make it on your own. That's certainly what I'm preaching. I've worked with, one family in like top 20 wealthiest family in the world kind of situation. You all know the family in the business, and the kids were amazingly, the grandkids, the G3, they had all been told, you know your last name, you know the famous family in the business, it's all going to charity, so you guys better go to school and make a life for yourself. And they did. They brought me in because they said, now how do we tell them that we lied, and they each have a trust worth $200 million. Yeah, Grandpa invested in this crazy business. He invested about $100,000, and it turned into $80 billion. And then thinking he put stock for the grandkids 20, 25 years ago. Each grandkid, when they were born, got just like $100,000. That turned into $200 million. I mean, this is very unusual stuff. But they lied, and now and it sort of worked for them, but it was dishonest. And I think it's interesting. People, right? We're not here to judge. People do things different ways. I think if you do that, and you don't give them anything or very little when there's tons, and if you don't have a lot of really good conversation about why you're doing it, the kids could really resent it. They could feel cheated. They could feel like you don't love them or that you don't trust them. Like a lot of deeper relationship issues come up that aren't so much about money, but like, why did you do this? I could have started a business. I could have started a foundation and given it away. There's so many ways that it could go awry. So it takes some real communication about this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing it. Maybe even keep an open mind to doing something differently if the kids can, justify it in some way.
I have this client.
Thanks for the mic.
I have this client that's similar to the fellow behind me. She's worth about $1/3 billion, and she's got all three of her kids on payroll, making 150 grand a year. One guy's a pickleball king, and another guy, who knows what he does, and the daughter just follows her around. None of them can run the business like she does, but she's about 65. Is that the kind of a case where we would invite you in on, and you would contact the client, and we would set you up, and then you could counsel him, hopefully, to something reasonable? Or can you speak to that kind of a
Yeah, I mean, it depends. What do they think of? They might think this is all very reasonable and not want any change. And why the hell are you introducing us to this Jeff Savlov guy? Because we're all really happy playing pickleball.
Well, the mom took me to lunch the other day and says, what am I going to do? I raised a bunch of do-nothings.
So the question there becomes, can the pickleball king and these other siblings come together and be a functional ownership group working with a board and non-family management, and can they really make decisions together and learn what it means to be a good ownership group? That's often a solution like that to keep it in the family. But if they don't have the skills, if they're not willing to be developed, mom could sell the business, which often they don't want to do. I've seen more businesses go to siblings because the parent can't let go of the idea, the romance of multi-generational business. I have siblings right now I'm working with, they're at each other's throats. They were gifted the business, gifted it. They're each making $1.25 million for a business they never would have gotten on their own. $1.25 million. The business was given to them outright, and they're just trashing the whole thing. And the sister just said last week to the dad who gave them this business for no money, hey, if you don't like the way my brother and I are handling this, why don't you, Dad, just buy back my shares? Buy back my shares. He gave this to them. She's making $1.25 million and asking her dad to buy back my shares.
Wow.
So sometimes giving it to the kids one way or another is a mistake, and it's the romance of I have to make it to the next generation to be as successful gets in the way. So where I would be helpful if they even wanted any help is to sort of help them think through the different possibilities. How happy are they with where things are at? Where are the pain points? And what do they sort of want to do going forward?
I like the notion that you're bringing up of the parent falling on the sword and saying, hey, I screwed up, let's do a reset.
Yeah, let's rethink this. I don't like some of what I'm seeing. It doesn't make sense for us.
You mentioned education, creativity, cooperation, tradition, and family as key values. Did you find any of those being more important?
Yeah. So to clarify, that was a slide where I just picked 6 out of like 30 that I used. So those were not meant to be more important than any others. It was really just a sample slide, but I think I need to change the slide because that keeps coming up. Those are, every family picks. Again, I have these decks of cards, and I can send you guys this exercise I do. I have a PDF. I can have the FFR folks send it to all of you, and you can see the exercise, but there's 30 different values, and it's really up to the family which are important to them. So that was my bad on that slide. It's very confusing. All right, I think we're good, and thanks for the interaction. I love to have some back and forth.